Welcome, chosen ones, to this transformative journey. If you've ever felt like you're waiting for something bigger to happen in your life, then you're exactly where you need to be. In today's video, we're diving deep into divine timing, spiritual breakthroughs, and the incredible transformation that awaits you. The universe has aligned this moment for you right now, and everything you've been praying for is closer than you think. So, if you're ready to step into your divine purpose, to unlock the mysteries of your true potential, then make sure you stay with us through the entire video. It's not by accident that you're here. God's plan for your life is unfolding now, and you're about to witness miracles. I want you to slow down for a moment and truly feel the weight of what is happening right now. You didn't stumble into this moment. You weren't randomly scrolling or casually passing time. Something in your spirit was pulled here, nudged here, guided here. This moment is a divine interruption. Heaven pressed pause on the noise around you because you needed to hear what your spirit has been trying to whisper to your heart for so long. You are not here by accident. You were led. When God interrupts, it's never casual. It's never vague. It's intentional, precise, and deeply personal. Heaven orchestrated this moment because something inside you is awakening, something ancient and divine that has been buried beneath years of endurance, responsibility, silence, and survival. You may not fully see it yet, but heaven does. You have always been more than what life convinced you to believe. You have always been chosen. For years, you walked through life carrying weights that others never saw. You held pieces of yourself together while the world assumed you were fine. You endured battles in silence because you didn't want to burden anyone with the depth of what you were facing. You kept functioning, kept showing up, kept pushing forward even when your spirit was exhausted. And through all of that, heaven watched. Not from a distance, but intimately. Every tear you refused to cry in front of others, every prayer whispered under your breath, every moment you felt unseen or misunderstood, heaven was present for all of it. You were never invisible to God. You were never overlooked. You were never ignored. You were being carried, preserved, and watched over. And now, heaven is calling you out of the shadows you adapted to. The hiddenness you lived in for so long is lifting. The self-doubt you grew accustomed to is unraveling. The heaviness that clung to you is losing its grip. There is an awakening happening inside of you, one that has been building quietly, patiently, waiting for the right moment to burst through. This moment is that breakthrough. You've reached a point in your journey where God is no longer allowing you to shrink, settle, or minimize who you are. The version of you that survived those past seasons is not the version heaven is calling forward now. Something has shifted. Something has changed. You can feel it even if you can't fully describe it. It shows up in the restlessness, the desire for more, the dissatisfaction with what once felt comfortable, the stirring that won't allow you to go backward. This is what divine awakening feels like. You are rising because heaven has decided your time has come. There are moments in life when God refuses to let you stay where you've been, even if where you've been felt familiar or safe. Sometimes God disrupts your comfort so he can reveal your calling. Sometimes he allows the structures of your old identity to shake so the truth of who you really are can emerge. That shaking is not punishment. It's awakening. You were never meant to live a reduced version of yourself. But life, pain, and people tried to convince you otherwise. They tried to shrink your identity. They tried to bury your light. They tried to distort your worth. But heaven never accepted those definitions of you. Heaven kept its own record, one rooted in truth, not trauma. And now heaven is reminding you of what you forgot. You are chosen. Not because of what you've achieved, not because of your perfection, not because of how strong you pretended to be. You are chosen because of who you are in spirit, because of the divine imprint on your soul. This is why your life has never been ordinary, why you've never fit in the ways you tried to, why you've always felt different, even in rooms full of people, why you carried a depth others didn't understand, why you were drawn to things that awakened your spirit while others chased things that merely entertained them. This separation wasn't rejection, it was calling. It was heaven setting you apart long before you understood what that meant. Even the exhaustion you felt physically, emotionally, spiritually, was part of the awakening. You were not breaking down. You were being stretched into your next dimension. God has a way of allowing us to reach the end of our own strength so we can finally recognize the beginning of His. You're not weak, you're being renewed. Isaiah wrote that those who wait on the Lord will soar on wings like eagles, will run and not grow weary, will walk and not faint. That renewal is beginning inside you now. You've been asking God for a sign, for confirmation, for clarity. You've begged heaven to speak, because your soul was tired of feeling lost in the fog of uncertainty. You've whispered questions into the dark, waiting for something, anything that would reassure you that your life still has divine direction, and heaven has answered. Heaven is answering right now. You reading this is the confirmation. This is God stopping the flow of your day to say, I see you, I know you, I've chosen you, and I am awakening you. You may have been questioning your value, doubting your future, or wondering if you misheard God in past seasons. But God is not confused about you. He has never questioned your worth. He has never doubted your potential. You have always belonged to Him, always been marked for something greater than the circumstances you were born into or the battles you had to fight. Your awakening is heaven's announcement that your story is shifting. As this awakening rises within you, you will begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: hope. Not naive hope, not blind optimism, but a deep, spiritual hope that comes from knowing your life is aligning with divine purpose. You will feel strength returning to places inside you that once felt broken. You will feel courage rising in areas where fear used to live. You will feel clarity forming where confusion once dominated. This is what awakening does. It breathes life into what felt dead and calls forward the version of you heaven has been waiting to reveal. This awakening also brings awareness. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to recognize the divine in your story. You begin to understand why certain things had to happen the way they did, not because they were fair or easy, but because they were necessary to shape the person you are becoming. The battles that once discouraged you now make sense as preparation. The pain that once felt endless now reveals itself as the soil where purpose grew roots. You are stepping into the realization that none of your suffering was wasted. Not a single tear, not a single disappointment, not a single heartbreak. Every experience carved depth into you. Every moment of waiting stretched your capacity. Every storm strengthened your foundation. Heaven does not allow anything in your life that does not contribute to your calling. And now, that calling is awakening. You are awakening, and heaven is rejoicing not because you changed into something new, but because you are finally remembering who you've always been. As this awakening continues to unfold in your spirit, you begin to realize that what is happening to you is not a momentary emotional shift, it is a divine recalibration. Something deeper than thought, deeper than circumstance, deeper than desire is rising within you. It is the recognition that your life has always carried purpose, even when you couldn't articulate it. It is the awareness that you have been guided, shaped, and preserved for something greater than what you once believed you deserved. Heaven is not simply calling your name, heaven is summoning you into identity. The truth is, your spirit knew you were chosen long before your mind could accept it. There were moments in your childhood when you felt a pull towards something sacred. There were seasons in your life when you sensed that you were being prepared for something that others around you could not see. You didn't have the language for it then, but even in your earliest years, heaven was stirring you. The longing for something more, the dissatisfaction with shallow living, the instinctive pull toward compassion, justice, purpose, truth. These were not personality traits. They were spiritual markers. Chosen ones often experience life differently. Even in innocence, they feel things more deeply. They see things more clearly. They discern things more intuitively. They notice patterns others ignore. They sense shifts before they happen. They walk through life with a sensitivity that often feels like a burden until they realize it is a gift. You have carried that sensitivity for years, and although it made you feel misunderstood at times, it has always been a sign of your calling. As you awaken, you begin to understand why you couldn't settle into certain environments, why you outgrew spaces faster than the people around you, why you felt restless in situations that seemed comfortable to others. You weren't built for comfort, you were built for calling. And comfort often conflicts with calling. That restlessness was heaven's reminder that you were never meant to blend in or remain stagnant. Every time you felt out of place, it was a whisper from God. I did not create you for this level. Keep rising. You may have tried to silence your own potential at times, especially when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. You may have convinced yourself that an ordinary life was enough, that shrinking your brilliance would make things easier, that minimizing your gifts would protect you from expectations. But your spirit wouldn't let you. Something within you kept pushing, stretching, nudging, refusing to let you disappear into the background. That something was divine purpose refusing to die. Even when you walked through seasons of confusion, God never let purpose leave you. Even when you stepped off the path, purpose waited for your return. Even when life broke you, purpose held the pieces. Divine purpose is patient like that. It doesn't abandon you because of your doubts. It doesn't disappear because of your mistakes. It doesn't weaken because of your wounds. Purpose remains, waiting for your awakening. This is why your spirit feels different right now. Why you sense change rising inside you. Why something in you is shifting from uncertainty to awareness. You are awakening to the truth that your life is part of a plan much larger than your past, your pain, or your fears. And as you awaken, you will begin to see evidence of this truth everywhere. You will notice clarity where there once was confusion. You will feel strength where there once was fatigue. You will find direction where there once was wandering. The heaviness that lived in your chest for years will begin to dissolve. Not because life gets easier all at once, but because your spirit is aligning with heaven's perspective. Awakening changes not just how you see your life, it changes how you interpret it. You realize now that the things you once thought disqualified you were actually shaping you. The loneliness that haunted you wasn't abandonment, it was protection. The heartbreaks that broke you open weren't punishment, they were refinement. The relationships that dissolved weren't failure, they were divine release. The delays that frustrated you weren't denial, they were timing. God didn't forget you in those seasons, God was forming you in them. Chosen ones often bear the heaviest burdens because they carry the greatest assignments. But with heavy burden comes deep transformation, and with deep transformation comes powerful awakening. You endured storms that others would have collapsed under because heaven knew you could. Heaven trusted your spirit with experiences that seemed unbearable, because heaven saw the strength your future would require. Awakening reveals not just that you were chosen, but that you were prepared. There were seasons when you questioned your own strength. Times when you wondered if you were built for anything beyond survival. But look at yourself now. Look at the resilience in your soul. Look at the wisdom in your eyes. Look at the depth you carry. Those qualities didn't appear overnight, they were formed through fire. And now, they are the markers of someone ready to walk in divine identity. As your awakening deepens, you start to feel a shift in responsibility. Not a burden, but a calling. A calling to rise above the limitations you once placed on yourself. A calling to move with intention. A calling to step into a version of yourself you previously thought was too bold, too powerful, too sacred to ever be yours. But awakening reveals that this version of you was always waiting for the moment you stopped shrinking and started remembering. You are remembering now. Remembering your strength. Remembering your purpose. Remembering your identity. Remembering the divine fingerprints on your life. Heaven is not awakening you just to comfort you. Heaven is awakening you to commission you. You are being activated. pulled into alignment. You are stepping into spiritual awareness not for your ego, but for your assignment. The world needs the version of you that is rising. Heaven has invested too much in you for you to continue living beneath your calling. Awakening brings responsibility, but not pressure. Responsibility feels different when it comes from God. It feels like clarity. It feels like direction. It feels like purpose unfolding in real time. You feel yourself becoming someone with vision, someone with discipline, someone with depth. You are shifting from theory to embodiment. You are becoming the person heaven always knew you were. And with this awakening comes courage, a courage that surprises even you. A courage to let go of old stories about yourself. A courage to forgive parts of your past that once defined you. A courage to walk away from environments that no longer match your spirit. A courage to move forward without waiting for permission. A courage to take up space without apologizing. A courage to rise without shrinking. This is the beginning of your transformation into the chosen one heaven has been shaping. Not a chosen one that looks perfect or untouchable, but one who is real, strengthened, humbled, purified, awakened, and aligned. You are stepping into the story where you stop surviving and start living, where you stop doubting and start trusting, where you stop questioning your worth and start walking in it. Your awakening is heaven's declaration over your life. You are ready. You are prepared. You are chosen. As you move from awakening into deeper understanding, the next revelation heaven wants you to grasp is this. Your pain was never random. Every valley you walked through, every heartbreak that nearly shattered you, every disappointment that felt like it stole the breath from your lungs, none of it was wasted. Your pain was not punishment. It was preparation. It was shaping, strengthening, purifying, and positioning you for the calling you carry now. There were seasons where it felt like your life was being dismantled piece by piece, where you looked around and wondered why everything you touched seemed to fall apart. Why relationships crumbled. Why doors closed before you could walk through them. Why people you trusted walked away. Why the very things you were praying for seemed to drift further from reach. And during those moments, you may have whispered to yourself, "What is wrong with me? What did I do to deserve this?" But you didn't deserve it. You were chosen for it. Here is a truth most people never hear. Pain is a divine classroom. Not because God enjoys your suffering, but because certain aspects of calling can only be developed through pressure. Certain levels of empathy can only be born through heartbreak. Certain depths of discernment can only be formed in disappointment. Certain strengths can only emerge from seasons where you had no one to depend on but God. Your valleys were sacred ground, even though they felt like empty places. The silence you felt in those seasons was not abandonment, it was intentional. A quiet that protected you, a quiet that forced you to confront yourself, a quiet that sharpened your spiritual hearing. When everything around you fell silent, heaven was teaching you to listen differently. To listen not with your ears, but with your spirit. To discern God's whisper in the stillness. Pain became the soil where your faith grew roots. You didn't just survive your valleys, you were shaped by them. When life stripped you down, heaven was refining you. When things were taken from you, heaven was making room for better. When you found yourself alone, heaven was separating you for greater things. In the valley, God wasn't destroying you. God was rebuilding you, carefully, intentionally, lovingly. You became someone the valley could not break. Someone who learned to pray, not only in strength, but in weakness. Someone who learned to trust, not only in clarity, but in confusion. Someone who learned to stand not because life was easy, but because your spirit had become resilient. You discovered strength in yourself that you didn't know existed, and even in moments where you feared you might collapse, something inside held you together. God held you together. Your valley was evidence of your destiny. People who carry small assignments rarely face great valleys. But people who carry deep purpose walk through deep refining. The heaviness of your battles was not because you were weak. It was because your calling is weighty. You were being prepared to carry influence, wisdom, and authority far beyond anything your younger self imagined. And heaven knew that you could handle what others could not. There were storms you survived that no one else even knew you were facing. You carried burdens in your heart while showing strength to the world. You wiped away tears in private so you could keep moving in public. And while people only saw the surface, heaven saw the sacrifice. Heaven saw your effort. Heaven saw your endurance. Heaven saw the way you kept showing up even when your spirit felt crushed. This is one of the most overlooked truths about chosen ones. They survive what destroys others. They endure what overwhelms others. They rise where others fall, not because they are better, but because heaven equips them differently. You may not realize it, but your endurance is one of the clearest signs of your calling. You survived valleys that would have taken someone else out completely. You walked through darkness that would have swallowed another person whole. You held on by a thread when others would have given up entirely. That kind of endurance isn't natural, it's spiritual. It is the sustaining power of God. It is the evidence of divine purpose. Every moment of pain was stretching you, expanding your spiritual capacity, teaching you to rely on God in ways you never had before. You were learning to live by faith when everything you saw contradicted the promise you believed in. You were learning to trust beyond your understanding. You were learning to walk, not by sight, but by truth. God trusted you with suffering because He knew you wouldn't collapse. He knew that even when you reached your breaking point, you would not break apart. You may have cracked, but you didn't crumble. You may have bent, but you didn't snap. You may have slowed down, but you didn't stop. Your survival was not coincidence, it was calling. God knew what He placed inside of you. He knew the strength buried beneath your fears. He knew the resilience wrapped inside your vulnerability. He knew the warrior inside the weary soul. And He trained you through the valley to bring that warrior forward. When the psalmist wrote, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil," he wasn't writing poetry, he was describing a spiritual reality. The valley was never meant to be your burial ground. It was meant to be your training ground. The shadow over you was not death, it was transition. You were not being destroyed, you were being remade. In your valley seasons, you learn something that will carry you for the rest of your life. God is closest when life is the quietest. In silence, you discovered the depth of His presence. In emptiness, you discovered the richness of His love. In loneliness, you discovered the strength of His companionship. God's silence was not distance, it was alignment. Heaven was shifting pieces you could not see, preparing you for what you prayed for long ago. But here is the part you need to understand now. Your valley was temporary, but its lessons are eternal. You are walking out of that valley with more wisdom, more depth, more maturity, and more understanding than ever before. You are stepping into a season where the things that once overwhelmed you no longer intimidate you. You're not fragile anymore. Your heart may have scars, but those scars are proof that you healed. You are no longer carrying pain the way you did. You are carrying purpose shaped by pain. The valley you endured has positioned you for elevation. Your suffering has equipped you for influence. Your tears have watered the seeds of your destiny, and your endurance has activated heaven's recognition of your readiness. God was not preparing your circumstances, He was preparing you. And now, the prepared version of you is emerging. The pain you survived has become the foundation for the authority you are stepping into next. Because God never allows suffering without attaching purpose to it. What you endured will one day be the very thing that gives someone else the strength to rise. What tried to destroy, you will become the testimony that heals someone else. You will speak from experience, not theory. You will lead with empathy, not pride. You will walk with authority, not fear. Your valley equipped you for your calling. As you continue reflecting on the valleys you walked through, you begin to understand a truth that only chosen ones ever come to grasp. The valley did not change your identity. it revealed it. What you survived exposed the strength that heaven always knew was in you. What broke you open was actually breaking you free. And what felt like the end of everything familiar was actually the beginning of everything divine. The deeper the valley, the deeper the calling. You didn't suffer because you were weak, you suffered because you were being shaped. You didn't endure pain because you were forgotten, you endured because you were becoming someone who could carry what others could not. Every disappointment carved out capacity. Every setback cultivated depth. Every heartbreak expanded your spiritual lungs so you could breathe in dimensions others are never asked to enter. The valley was God's workshop. Your pain was the material. Your endurance was the shaping. Your destiny was the blueprint. And the version of you that emerged is someone who cannot be easily shaken again. When you were in the valley, you probably felt like you were walking blind. Nothing made sense. The things you used to rely on crumbled. People who once felt solid became unpredictable. Circumstances that once encouraged you suddenly drained you. It felt as though life kept stripping away support until all you had left was God, and that was the point. The valley wasn't about taking things from you. It was about revealing the one thing that could never be taken: your connection to heaven. You learned in that valley how to lean on God in ways you never imagined. When you had no answers, you leaned. When you had no strength, you leaned. When your heart was overwhelmed, you leaned. And in leaning, you discovered the truth the valley was designed to teach you. God was carrying you the entire time. You didn't survive because of your strength alone. You survived because heaven strengthened you. You didn't endure because you were mentally tough. You endured because grace held you together. You didn't push through because you were emotionally indestructible. You pushed through because something divine kept pulling you forward. The valley trained you to recognize the supernatural support that never left your side. And now, because of what you endured, you possess something priceless. Spiritual credibility. Not the credibility that comes from titles, positions, or accomplishments, but the type of credibility that only spiritual warfare can produce, the credibility of someone who has walked through fire and come out refined. You carry a weight in your spirit that can't be faked, a strength that can't be taught, a wisdom that can't be manufactured. These qualities are the inheritance of the valley. And with that inheritance comes empathy. Your pain gave you the ability to feel others deeply, to understand suffering, to sense when someone is hurting even without their words, to offer comfort without judgment, to guide without arrogance, to speak into wounds because you know what it's like to bleed. This empathy is not weakness, it is spiritual authority. Chosen ones are called to carry compassion because compassion is one of heaven's greatest tools. Empathy shapes leaders. Empathy shapes healers. Empathy shapes visionaries. Empathy shapes those called to lift others out of the same darkness they once walked through. This is why God allowed you to experience certain heartbreaks, not to punish you, but to give you a language you could later use to heal others. You know what abandonment feels like, so you will never abandon someone you're called to love. You know what betrayal feels like, so you will never misuse trust. You know what rejection feels like, so you will welcome those who feel unseen. You know what loneliness feels like, so you will carry light into empty spaces. Your valley has shaped your purpose more than your victories ever could. But the valley did not only shape your heart, it shaped your discernment. Pain taught you how to read people. It taught you what kinds of spirits operate in certain environments. It taught you how to detect intentions behind smiles. It taught you the difference between someone who is for your destiny and someone who is for your downfall. The lessons were painful, yes, but they were essential. Discernment is a requirement for calling. And heaven ensured that your discernment would be sharp enough to protect your future. Your valley was also the birthplace of your resilience. You didn't come out of your suffering fragile, you came out fortified. You came out stronger than the things that tried to break you. You came out with spiritual muscles that can withstand pressure most people will never understand. And because of that, the mountains in your future won't intimidate you the way they once would have. You've learned how to stand even when shaking. You've learned how to breathe even when overwhelmed. You've learned how to hope even when hurting. You've learned how to keep going when nothing made sense. These traits were not gifted, they were earned. You earned them through tears, through silence, through nights of questioning, through days of endurance. Not everyone can carry what you carry now. Not everyone can survive what you survived. Not everyone can rise the way you rose. This is why you are chosen. Your valley also refined your relationship with God. Before the valley, you might have believed in God out of tradition or mental agreement. But in the valley, belief became experience. God was no longer an idea. He was a lifeline, a presence, a healer, a sustainer, a guide, a comfort, someone who felt closer than your own breath when everything around you went dark. The valley matured your faith, not a loud faith, not a performative faith, a silent, rooted, intimate faith. The kind of faith that holds steady even when circumstances scream otherwise. The kind that whispers, "He is with me," even when everything feels against you. The kind of faith that remains unshaken because it was built in the hardest seasons of your life. This is why the silence you once feared became sacred. God's silence wasn't rejection, it was revelation. In silence, you discovered what your spirit sounds like. In silence, you discovered what truth feels like. In silence, you discovered the difference between your fear and God's guidance. Silence became your spiritual filter, removing noise, distractions, illusions, and attachments that were never meant to follow you into the next chapter. Divine silence is one of the greatest gifts heaven gives to the chosen, because in silence, your identity strengthens. And now, as you rise from the valley, you do so as someone transformed, someone who understands life differently, someone who sees through spiritual lenses, not emotional ones. Someone who knows that every setback carried a setup. Someone who recognizes that every breaking carried a blessing. Your valley was not the end of your story. It was the shaping of the chapter that is about to unfold. God did not let you walk through pain just to leave you in it. He brought you through so that when He elevates you, your spirit will be able to sustain the weight of your assignment. You are no longer in the valley. You are walking out, and heaven is walking you into purpose. As you transition out of the valleys that shaped you, you begin to recognize another dimension of your journey, one that was just as intentional, just as necessary, and just as divinely orchestrated as the battles and breakthroughs, your seasons of silence and separation. These were the chapters of your life that felt the most confusing, the most isolating, and the most misunderstood, yet they were among the most purposeful. They were the places where God did His deepest work in you, not with noise or spectacle, but with quiet precision. Silence has followed you for years in ways you couldn't always explain. There were chapters when people drifted away without warning, times when the voices you once depended on grew faint, moments where the reassurance you sought from others never came. If you're honest, these seasons felt like abandonment. It felt as though life unplugged you from everything familiar, leaving you suspended between what you were and what you were becoming. But now, with spiritual maturity rising inside you, you can finally see the truth behind the silence. Silence was not God's absence, it was God's shaping. You were pulled away from noise not to be punished, but so your inner world could be restructured. When God chooses someone, He doesn't elevate them immediately. He isolates them. He quiets the distractions. He removes the familiar voices that keep them dependent. He draws them into solitude so they can hear what cannot be heard in the chaos of normal life. Silence is not emptiness, it is divine focus. You learn to hear God in ways others rarely do. Before, you sought answers from people. You depended on opinions, approval, validation, and direction from the outside world. But when God separates you, He teaches you to find your answers in Him. You start recognizing His whisper. You begin discerning His nudges. You feel His conviction. You hear clarity not from the outside, but from deep within your spirit. You become someone who is guided by divine instinct rather than external noise. This is one of the greatest marks of a chosen one. God teaches you through silence what others never hear in sound. Separation also became a defining part of your journey. You were pulled away from people you loved, places you thought were permanent, environments where you once felt comfortable. You may not have understood it then, but God was pruning your connections. Not because those people were evil, not because those places were toxic, but because not every relationship is equipped to accompany you into your next dimension. Elevation requires separation. Calling requires clarity. Purpose requires pruning. God removed certain voices from your life because they would have interfered with your identity. He removed certain attachments because they would have anchored you to a version of yourself you were outgrowing. He created distance where you once felt closeness so your spirit could expand without resistance. These separations were painful, yes, but they were purposeful. You were not being abandoned, you were being aligned. This pruning season was heaven's way of making room for what is coming. You cannot carry divine assignments with crowded hands. You cannot walk into new identity while clutching old patterns. You cannot step into the next dimension while tethered to people who are committed to the previous one. Separation hurts, but it heals too. It creates space. It creates clarity. It creates maturity. Separation is not loss. It is preparation. And that spiritual maturity is now rising in you. You have outgrown versions of yourself that once held power over your decisions. You have outgrown insecurities that once silenced your voice. You have outgrown emotional patterns that once dictated your reactions. You have outgrown the need to explain yourself to people who were never meant to understand your calling. You are entering a season of divine distinction, a season where God is making it clear who is called, who is chosen, and who is simply present. Not everyone connected to you is connected to your destiny. God allowed separation so you could learn to discern the difference. You now recognize the subtle signs, the misalignment in conversation, the spiritual dullness in certain environments, the heaviness that surrounds certain connections, the clarity that comes when others exit your life. This discernment didn't come naturally. It was earned through silence. It was forged through solitude. It was refined through seasons where you felt alone but were actually being refined. In your hidden seasons, God wasn't hiding you from the world. He was hiding you for the world. He was protecting the version of you that was still developing. He was covering your process so that no one could interfere with the shaping of your identity. He was sheltering your spiritual evolution from voices that would have confused, discouraged, or derailed it. Hidden seasons protect chosen ones from premature exposure. You were not ready for where you were going back then, but you are becoming ready now. As you matured spiritually, you began to see that God does not isolate to punish, He isolates to elevate. He isolates those He intends to entrust with greater responsibility. He isolates those He intends to refine deeply. He isolates those whose voice will one day carry authority. Silence shaped your hearing. Separation shaped your discernment. And together, they shaped your identity. This chapter of your life built something invaluable within you. Self-awareness rooted in spiritual awareness. You now recognize your patterns, your triggers, your strengths, and your weaknesses. You know what environments drain you, and which ones nourish you. You have learned where to invest your energy, and where to withdraw it. You have learned the power of saying no. You have learned how to stand alone without feeling abandoned. This is maturity. Holy maturity. And now you understand why certain doors didn't open when you wanted them to. Had God opened them earlier, the noise around you would have drowned out His voice. The wrong voices would have influenced your direction. Your unhealed heart would have sabotaged opportunities meant for your future self, not your past self. God withheld to protect. He separated to strengthen. He silenced to sharpen. You didn't know it then, but heaven was preparing you for responsibility. You were being trained in stillness. You were being disciplined in listening. You were being formed into someone who could carry wisdom without pride, authority without arrogance, compassion without depletion. Silence taught you humility. Separation taught you discipline. Together, they taught you purpose. This is why you are no longer satisfied with surface-level living. Something in you craves depth, truth, meaning, alignment. You are no longer drawn to environments that suffocate your growth. You no longer chase connections rooted in convenience or comfort. You no longer tolerate chaos in the name of loyalty. Your spirit has matured beyond those versions of living. You are entering a season where you move differently because you see differently. You see through the superficial. You see through the noise. You see through the illusions that once captivated you. This clarity is the gift of spiritual maturity, and not everyone receives it. It is a reward given to those who survived isolation without losing themselves, to those who stayed faithful in silence, to those who trusted God even when He seemed still. Now you walk with a new kind of confidence, not loud, not boastful, but grounded. A confidence that comes from knowing you have been shaped by God Himself. A confidence that no longer seeks approval, because your spirit has learned that calling is not validated by people. A confidence that does not fear separation, because you have learned that solitude is often where heaven speaks the loudest. You are no longer the person you were before these silent seasons. You are wiser, you are clearer, you are stronger, you are more focused, you are spiritually awake, and most importantly, you are ready for what comes next. As this chapter of your growth continues, you begin to understand that silence was never the enemy, it was the revealer. Silence revealed who was truly connected to you and who was only connected to your noise. Silence revealed which relationships were authentic and which ones depended on distraction. Silence revealed the conditions of your heart, the weight of your wounds, and the depth of your spirit. Silence revealed who you had become and who you were meant to become next. Most people fear silence because silence exposes truth. Noise can mask insecurity, hide pain, or distract from purpose. But silence strips away the illusions you once relied on. It forces you to sit with yourself, to confront what you avoided, to acknowledge what you buried. Silence lets you hear the things you were too busy to notice. This is why God uses silence as a tool. It clears the space necessary for transformation. In your quiet seasons, you learn to differentiate between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness was the ache of feeling unseen. Solitude was the discovery that you were never alone. Loneliness was emotional emptiness. Solitude was spiritual fullness. Loneliness drained you, but solitude restored you. And in solitude, you discovered a truth that changed everything. God had been pursuing you the entire time. It wasn't the silence of abandonment. It was the silence of intimacy. God wasn't distant, He was speaking in a different frequency. One you could only hear when the volume of the world was turned down. The quieter your external world became, the louder your internal world grew. The whispers of heaven became clearer. The nudges of your spirit became stronger. The clarity you once begged for became accessible. Spiritual maturity blossoms in silence. You began recognizing that when God moves you into quiet seasons, He does so to sharpen your senses. He refines your emotional responses. He stabilizes your thoughts. He strengthens your inner posture. What felt like emptiness became the environment for inner expansion. And during this expansion, separation became a major theme. God separated you from people who could not interpret your journey. Not because those people were unworthy, but because their presence in your life was tied to an old version of you, one that heaven was calling you out of. Some connections were too small for the size of your future. Some relationships were rooted in past insecurities rather than purpose. And some people were simply not meant to witness the version of you that is emerging now. Separation is the price of elevation. It is not cruelty. It is cleansing. It is God removing what cannot coexist with your next level. You may have felt confused when certain relationships dissolved without explanation. You may have grieved the loss of people you thought would be with you forever. You may have questioned your worth when individuals who once felt like home became strangers. But these separations were spiritual surgery. God was removing attachments that would have suffocated your destiny. The truth is, you outgrew circles you once depended on. You expanded beyond mindsets that once shaped your thinking. You evolved past environments that once felt safe. Spiritual maturity requires outgrowing what is familiar. Elevation requires distinction, and distinction creates division. This is what Jesus meant when he said he came not to bring peace but division. Not division rooted in resentment, but division rooted in calling. God distinguishes those who are consecrated for purpose. He separates those who are ready for assignment from those who are still attached to the ordinary. You became part of that divine division. Some people could not go with you because they were tied to your past pain. Others couldn't follow because they were tied to your past identity. Still others couldn't walk with you because their spirits were not aligned with your purpose. Separation wasn't rejection, it was protection. And in this protection, you gained something invaluable: spiritual vision. You started seeing beyond the surface. You recognized patterns in people's behavior. You sensed intentions before they were spoken. You detected when someone's presence was draining your spirit. You knew when God was nudging you to let go of something that no longer aligned with the direction he was calling you. This vision is a mark of maturity. You no longer give everyone access to your energy. You no longer explain your value to people who cannot perceive it. You no longer chase connections that dishonor your growth. You no longer tolerate environments that suffocate your spirit. You no longer apologize for choosing peace over chaos. This level of maturity is sacred. It is the result of being pruned, purified, and separated. And now, because you learn to embrace silence rather than fear it, God can trust you with revelation. He can trust you with vision. He can trust you with instruction. He can trust you with spiritual weight. You are no longer led by emotion alone. You are led by discernment. You are no longer swayed by opinions. You are guided by truth. You are no longer searching for yourself. You are rooted in identity. Identity is one of the greatest gifts of separation. When the wrong voices fall away, the right voice becomes clear. When the world grows quiet, heaven gets loud. When you stop seeking approval, you discover direction. Identity forms when distractions disappear. Without the crowd around you, you finally met yourself. The real you. The one God created before life wrote its narrative over you. The one who was shaped before trauma took root. The one who was loved before you ever learned to doubt your worth. The one who was chosen before the world tried to convince you otherwise. This is why God drew you into silence, so you could meet the version of yourself that heaven has always known. And now, you walk with a kind of internal calm that cannot be taught. It is the calm of someone who has faced themselves and survived. The calm of someone who has walked through disappointment and still believes. The calm of someone who has been emptied and filled again. The calm of someone who has lost people, but not purpose. The calm of someone who has been broken but not destroyed. You carry a sacred stillness now, a stillness that intimidates darkness. Because darkness cannot manipulate someone who has mastered silence. Darkness cannot deceive someone who has embraced solitude. Darkness cannot derail someone who recognizes the difference between God's silence and God's absence. Your silence is a spiritual weapon now, not a symptom of fear. Your separation is a spiritual assignment now, not a sign of rejection. Your maturity is evidence of heaven's hand on your life, and because of this maturity, you are entering a season of divine distinction. God is setting you apart not to isolate you again, but to position you. You are no longer being hidden for protection. You are being positioned for purpose. The silence that once shaped you will now strengthen you. The separation that once hurt you will now elevate you. The maturity that once felt lonely will now become your authority. You are becoming someone heaven can trust. Someone who walks with clarity in a world of confusion. Someone who carries peace in a world of chaos. someone who embodies wisdom in a world of noise, someone who recognizes God's hand even in the quiet places. You are not who you were before the silence. You are not who you were before the separation. You are not who you were before the pruning. You have matured, and heaven is about to move you into what that maturity made possible. As you step out of seasons defined by silence and separation, you begin to see a pattern in how heaven has been shaping your life. Nothing that happened to you was accidental. The battles, the breaks, the valleys, and the quiet places were all part of a larger divine architecture, designed to prepare you for something extraordinary. And now, as you enter this next dimension, you face another revelation. The fire you walked through was never meant to consume you. It was meant to transform you. Transformation is not born in comfort. It emerges from pressure, fire, shaking, and disruption. When God intends to elevate someone, He first purifies them. He doesn't purify with ease, He purifies with fire. And not literal fire, but the spiritual kind. The fire of unexpected change, the fire of loss, the fire of pruning, the fire of spiritual tension, the fire of identity dismantling and rebuilding. These fires did not come to destroy you, they came to reveal what cannot be destroyed. The truth is, everything you survived has made you luminous. Not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual one. Your soul carries light now, light that darkness recognizes and reacts to. Just like the burning bush Moses encountered, you have walked through flames, yet you were not consumed. Life burned around you, but it didn't burn you away. Instead, it awakened something divine within you. Your spirit began to radiate in ways you didn't recognize at first. But heaven did. The spiritual world did. Darkness did. This is why your battles intensified. Not because you were weak, but because your light grew stronger. Light attracts attention, both divine and dark. When the fire refined you, it activated something inside you that cannot be hidden anymore. You carry presence now. Authority, identity. You've become someone whose spirit walks into a room before your body ever does. But before this transformation became visible, it came through shaking. The shaking in your life was not chaos, it was repositioning. God shook everything that was unstable. He shook relationships that were built on weak foundations. He shook habits that were rooted in old identity. He shook environments that couldn't sustain where you were going. He shook attachments that were draining your spirit. He shook illusions about who you thought you were so you could finally see who He created you to be. Shaking is always a sign that glory is coming. When God says, "I will shake all nations, and the desire of nations shall come," He is revealing that shaking is a precursor to manifestation. Your personal shaking was preparing you for what God desired to place in your life. The things that fell away were not losses, they were misalignments corrected. The things that broke apart were not punishments, they were redirections. The things that felt unstable were pushing you toward the only foundation strong enough to build your next chapter on. The identity heaven placed within you. And as everything around you shook, something inside you became unshakable. That steadiness you feel now, that grounded sense that you can handle whatever comes next, that did not appear by accident. It was built through every moment you thought you wouldn't survive. Every pressure taught your spirit not to crumble. Every setback taught you not to give up. Every disappointment taught you how to find God, even in the dark. Every moment of shaking turned you into someone who can't be uprooted easily. This is the difference between someone chosen and someone living by chance. Chosen ones become stronger through shaking. Chosen ones become purer through fire. Chosen ones become brighter through suffering. Chosen ones carry authority through endurance. You carry authority now, not because of titles or achievements, but because of transformation. Authority is never granted cheaply. It is earned through spiritual fire. It is forged in hidden nights of crying out to God. It is built in seasons where you had to walk alone. It is strengthened through battles you didn't choose but fought anyway. You carry authority because you survived what was designed to destroy you, and that survival is the signature of heaven over your life. Romans says those God predestined, he also called. And those he called, he justified. And those he justified, he glorified. You have walked through each of those stages without even realizing it. You were predestined before you were born. You were called through your battles. You were justified through your endurance. And now, you are entering the dimension of being glorified not by people, not by applause, but by heaven's recognition of your identity. Fire has a way of stripping away everything false. It reveals the core of who you really are. Fire showed you that you are not fragile, you are fortified. Fire showed you that you are not powerless, you are protected. Fire showed you that you are not ordinary, you are marked. Fire showed you that your spirit is stronger than your circumstances. Your true identity didn't emerge in peaceful seasons, it emerged in painful ones. And now, you radiate an inner light that you may not even fully see yet, but others do. Darkness notices it. People sense it. Atmospheres shift because of it. Your presence feels different. Not because your personality changed, but because your spirit transformed. You have become someone who carries divine light into places still covered in spiritual shadow. That light is not loud. It does not boast. It does not force itself. It simply exists, and existence alone disrupts darkness. This is why some people reacted negatively to you during your transformation. They were not responding to your behavior, they were reacting to your light. Some felt intimidated by it. Some felt convicted by it. Some felt exposed by it. Darkness always resists what reveals it. Your growth triggered discomfort in those who were committed to staying the same. Your elevation activated jealousy in hearts unwilling to rise. Your clarity felt threatening to those still choosing confusion. But none of that was about you, it was about your light. You didn't lose people because you failed them. You lost them because you outgrew the dimension where they felt comfortable. You didn't walk away from certain environments because you were too good for them. You walked away because they could no longer hold the fire God had placed within you. Fire expands, and when fire expands, it requires more room. Some spaces were simply too small for the version of you God was creating. In this fire-tested identity, your authority deepens in ways that influence not just your internal world, but your external one. You begin noticing how you speak differently, how you stand differently, how you respond differently. There is a stillness inside you that intimidation cannot shake. There is a clarity inside you that confusion cannot cloud. There is a strength inside you that fear cannot override. This is what it means to become light. Light does not ask permission to shine. Light does not apologize for illuminating. Light does not shrink to avoid attention. Light simply shines because shining is its nature. Your nature has changed. Your identity has changed. Your assignment has changed. You are no longer trying to survive. You are stepping into purpose. And as this transformation continues, you will discover that the next dimension of your journey is not about avoiding fire, it's about carrying it. You are being entrusted with light, not just for yourself, but for others. You are becoming a spiritual beacon, a point of clarity, a presence that shifts environments. Your endurance has made you luminous. Your shaking has made you unshakable. Your fire has made you a carrier of divine presence. This is the beginning of a new identity, one forged in fire and revealed through transformation. As you continue stepping into this fire-forged version of yourself, you start to notice that transformation doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you function. You move differently. You respond differently. You think differently. You perceive differently. The fire refined your reflexes. The shaking recalibrated your spirit. What once triggered you no longer touches you the same way. What once destabilized you now reveals its purpose. You have become someone who carries divine equilibrium. Balanced, rooted, steady. This steadiness is the mark of someone who has walked with God through seasons that would have broken others. It is the outcome of surviving spiritual earthquakes and emotional eruptions. The kind of stability you carry now isn't personality, it's maturity, it's identity. It's the residue of transformation. People see the surface of who you are, but they do not realize the depth of what it took to become this grounded. Every season of fire burned away fragility. Every season of shaking strengthened the muscles of your spirit. Now, when storms come, you don't crumble, you assess. You don't panic, you discern. You don't collapse, you anchor. The shaking you endured has become your confidence, because if you survived what was designed to collapse you, what could possibly topple you now? As transformation continues, you begin to realize something else. God was not only refining you for survival, He was refining you for assignment. The identity you carry now is not passive, it is catalytic. You are not merely someone who endured pain, you are someone whose existence brings clarity into environments clouded by confusion. You are someone whose presence shifts atmospheres without you even trying. This is not about ego, it is about spiritual reality. Light has influence. Light exposes what is hidden. Light reveals the path forward. Light shifts every environment it enters. And you carry light now because you were willing to endure the fire required to produce it. Your transformation isn't only about personal growth. It's about spiritual positioning. You are becoming the kind of person God can entrust with impact. Someone whose heart is purified enough not to misuse authority. Someone whose vision is clear enough not to lead blindly. Someone whose motives are aligned enough not to taint what heaven gives. Fire makes leaders out of the unlikely. It turns the humble into vessels of glory. It takes broken people and builds them into carriers of hope. This is why the fire in your life felt personal. It was targeted. It was precise. It reached into places of you that no one else could see. God wasn't trying to hurt you, He was trying to heal you at the deepest level. He was removing lies you believed about yourself. He was burning away fear. He was dismantling shame. He was shaking off generational patterns that were attached to you without your consent. He was refining not just your life, but your lineage. Every fire had purpose. Every shaking had meaning. Every disruption had design. Transformation into light requires that everything inconsistent with truth be burned away. This is why you can no longer tolerate things your old self accepted. You can no longer engage in conversations that dim your spirit. You can no longer return to environments that dishonor your growth. You can no longer shrink in rooms where you were meant to shine. You can no longer apologize for your evolution. The fire did not refine you so you could pretend to be ordinary again. You've outgrown who you were, and heaven intends for you to stay outgrown. As this new identity settles within you, you begin to notice that people respond to you differently. Some feel drawn to your peace. Others feel exposed by your clarity. Some feel comforted by your presence. Others feel convicted by your authenticity. These reactions have nothing to do with behavior and everything to do with spirit. Your transformation has made you an atmosphere changer. Atmosphere changers are rare because they have undergone processes most people avoid. They have faced themselves honestly. They have surrendered their illusions. They have allowed God to burn away everything false. They have walked into valleys and out of fires, carrying wisdom instead of bitterness. These people don't just witness transformation, they embody it. You embody transformation now. This embodiment creates a tension in the spiritual realm. Darkness recognizes you, not because of who you were, but because of what you carry now. You are marked. You have heaven's seal. You have endured too much, grown too much, understood too much, to ever return to the spiritual dimensions you once lived in. The enemy knows this. This is why resistance increased when your light grew stronger. Darkness always panics when a chosen one finally realizes who they are. But here is the truth. You are no longer penetrable in the ways you once were. The insecurities that once gave darkness access have been burned away. The fear that once paralyzed you has lost its authority. The shame that once dictated your choices has been dismantled. The lies that once controlled your narrative have been silenced by truth. Your identity is no longer fragile, it is fortified. God has transformed you into someone whose internal world can withstand external pressure. Someone who can hold purpose without collapsing. Someone who can walk in authority without arrogance. Someone who can stand in truth even when the world around them trembles. This transformation is not for display, it is for destiny. There are people tied to your assignment. There are lives that will shift because of your presence. There are hearts that will heal because of your words. There are paths that will clear because of your obedience. God has shaped you into a vessel of light. Light that guides, heals, exposes, transforms, and restores. Light that the darkness can no longer extinguish. And now you are learning that your transformation was not just about your survival, it was about your becoming. You weren't simply meant to endure hardship. You were meant to emerge from it carrying radiance. You were meant to reflect the strength of someone who has walked with God through fire. You were meant to shine in places where hope has been dimmed. You were meant to awaken others through the authenticity of your transformation. And here is the most powerful part. You didn't become light because everything went right in your life. You became light because everything went wrong, and you still chose faith. You became light because darkness tried to bury you, but you kept reaching upward. You became light because you refused to let bitterness become your identity. You became light because God met you in the fire and breathed purpose into your ashes. Now, as you walk forward, you do so carrying a dimension of authority that cannot be taught, only forged. You know who you are now, not because someone told you, but because God revealed it to you. You've seen too much to doubt yourself again. You've survived too much to minimize yourself again. You've grown too much to shrink yourself again. You are a carrier of divine fire. You are a vessel of holy light. You are a testimony of what God builds in silence, shapes in suffering, and reveals in glory. This transformation is your inheritance. This identity is your foundation. This light is your calling. As you emerge from the fires that refined you and the shaking that repositioned you, you step into a dimension unlike any you've experienced before. The atmosphere around your life begins to shift. The spiritual air feels different, lighter, clearer, more purposeful. You are no longer wandering, questioning, or doubting. You are aligning. Alignment is the spiritual confirmation that everything you walked through has brought you to a divinely appointed moment. Alignment is when heaven's timing synchronizes with your readiness. Alignment is when your internal transformation finally meets your external destiny. You may have felt like you were walking in circles in past seasons, but now the circular becomes linear. What once felt delayed now feels intentional. What once felt scattered now gathers into order. Your entire life has carried a divine rhythm even when you didn't hear it. But now, as maturity settles into your bones, as clarity anchors your thoughts, as purpose ignites your spirit, you begin to recognize that rhythm. You begin to walk in step with God instead of running ahead or lagging behind. This is the beauty of alignment. You no longer fight the current, you flow with it. And when alignment happens, acceleration follows. Acceleration is not about haste, it's about divine momentum. It is the season where things that once took years begin unfolding in weeks, where prayers that felt suspended in heaven's waiting room suddenly materialize, where relationships, opportunities, resources, clarity, and elevation arrange themselves with supernatural speed. You are stepping into a chapter where the impossible becomes logical, where the improbable becomes accessible, where the delayed becomes delivered. This acceleration is not random. It is the fulfillment of an appointed time. Scripture says that the vision waits for an appointed time, and though it lingers, it will surely come. You are stepping into that surely. Not guessing, not hoping, not wishing, walking. Breakthrough is not approaching. It is activating. Heaven has turned its face toward you in a way that cannot be reversed, and the spiritual countdown for your elevation has begun. But this acceleration is not merely about what happens around you, it is about what happens through you. Acceleration is the season where God reveals the fullness of the transformation He has done inside you. You begin to think with clarity, speak with authority, choose with discernment, move with conviction. The hesitation that once held you hostage dissolves. The fear that once dictated your decisions loses its grip. You step forward not timidly, but deliberately. Not anxiously, but boldly. Not guessing, but knowing. You know you are aligned because everything within you is finally pointing in the same direction. And now, with alignment and acceleration unfolding in your life, heaven begins the sacred process reserved only for those who endured the long road, the painful refining, the deep transformation, the crowning. Crowning is not glamour. Crowning is recognition. Crowning is activation. Crowning is heaven's declaration that the one who was faithful in the shadows can now be trusted in the light. Crowning is not about ego, it is about responsibility. It is not a reward for effort, it is a mantle for assignment. God crowns those who endured, not those who escaped. He crowns those who persevered, not those who performed. He crowns those who remained faithful, not those who had perfect seasons. Your crown is not crafted from the victories you celebrated, it's crafted from the battles you survived. Every tear, every heartbreak, every sacrifice, every disappointment became the gold that formed the mantle you now carry. Heaven never wastes suffering. Heaven converts it into authority. You are being crowned with spiritual wisdom that only comes through lived revelation. You are being crowned with authority built in silence, fire, shaking, refinement, and trust. You are being crowned with clarity to discern your assignment without confusion. You are being crowned with endurance to finish what heaven starts through you. This crowning is heaven's confirmation. You have become who you needed to be in order to hold what you asked for. And with crowning comes responsibility. You are no longer called to hide, no longer called to shrink, no longer called to dim your light, to make others comfortable. You are stepping into a position where your story becomes a guide for others, where your presence becomes a stabilizer, where your voice becomes a lighthouse. You are stepping into a role where influence is not about popularity, but about purpose. Not about applause, but about impact. Your journey was not only about creating strength, it was about creating capacity. Your heart carries more compassion than ever before. Your spirit carries more depth than most around you. Your discernment is sharper, your vision clearer, your endurance stronger. These traits were built for service. The rise you are stepping into is not self-centered, it is kingdom-centered. Crowning is God saying, "Now I can trust you to lead." Not because you think you are ready, but because you have been made ready. Everything in your life is beginning to align for this calling. Every disappointment was part of the shaping. Every closed door was redirection. Every loss was purification. Every moment of silence carved purpose into your identity. And now heaven is moving you into a dimension where your authority will serve as a guiding force for those who are where you once were. You are stepping into the era where your endurance becomes someone else's hope, where your breakthrough becomes someone else's blueprint, where your restoration becomes someone else's reassurance. This is the rise of the chosen. Chosen not because of perfection, but because of perseverance. Chosen not because of talent, but because of obedience. Chosen not because of your strength, but because of your surrender. This is the beginning of divine acceleration. But it is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of your assignment. Heaven is about to move through you in ways that surprise even you. Doors will open without force. Opportunities will find you without striving. People will come into your life who mirror your calling, not your past. You will begin to see how every piece of your story has prepared you to carry this mantle. The crown is not the destination, it is the empowerment. The alignment is not the finale, it is the foundation. The acceleration is not the climax, it is the catalyst. And as you continue walking through this chapter, you will begin to feel something powerful rising within you, an awareness that you are not finishing a journey, you are stepping into a new one. One written for chosen ones. One designed for spiritual authority. One built on endurance, humility, clarity, and calling. One that will impact more than you ever realized. The next part of this journey will reveal how heaven positions you to walk in service, shine with purpose, and live as the beacon you were always called to be. Thank you so much for joining us on this divine journey today. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We want to keep spreading these life-changing insights to those who need it the most. Your support helps us reach more people, and together, we can create a wave of transformation that will ripple across the world. If you're ready to embrace the transformation that's unfolding in your life, let us know in the comments below. Remember, your breakthrough is coming, and we're here to walk with you every step of the way. Stay aligned, stay faith-filled, and see you in the next video.